Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so glad you could join us for this UVM Staff Teams Live event, and I'm happy to be co-hosting with Gary Durr, our Vice President for Operations and Public Safety. I just wanted to open up with a few remarks, but we have some amazing experts who've been working night and day on weekends to make sure that we are well prepared for a safe and healthy fall return. So I was thinking a little bit about our staff and the term essential, and I started looking up the word essential and what does that mean? And it's someone who has dedicated skills, they make things work, they keep us up to date, they have expertise in particular subjects, they solve problems and situations, and they carry out activities that are important to our success. And I'm thinking, wow, these are incredible definitions of our staff. You make things work for us. You have incredible expertise. You're dedicated, doing things above and beyond in many cases during this COVID time. You keep us up to date, remind us of what we should be doing, where we should be, how things should be functioning. And whenever I have a challenge, I always go to one of my staff members and say, okay, help me figure this out. So a big thank you to you, and a big thank you to the staff and faculty and administrators who are working on making this a very safe fall return. I know our students are very excited about it, and they want it to be safe and want to support all the expectations we have. So I'm going to turn it over to Gary, and he's going to introduce what we're going to be tackling today, and I think you will get lots of valuable information. And thank you again for all your work.
So thank you very much, Patty, and it's great to be back together with you all. It's hard to believe it's August, but we're up and going and should be ready for fall. Today we're going to be focusing on faculty, programming, and technology in the classroom. I know many folks on this meeting are involved in, have roles in departments, in academic support services, in the college's office, and we thought it'd be real helpful for you to get to know. I want to now introduce you to the folks that are on our panel today, and some of them will be providing some comments. So if you advance the slide. If we could move the slide to the next one. Okay, good. So Annie Stevens, our Vice Provost for Student Affairs, Bill Falls, Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences, Simeon Ananu, our Chief Information Officer, Al Turgeon, our Chief Risk and Public Safety Officer, Jay Dickinson, the Associate Provost for Academic Affairs, and Kirk Dombrowski, our Vice President for Research. What I want to do now is turn it over to Dean Bill Falls, who will talk a little bit about some of the faculty and academic work that's going on.
Thanks, Gary. And let me just echo Provost Prelock and thanking many of you for your hard work. It's hard to believe that you know, just several weeks ago, we were trying to figure out how we were going to welcome back all of our students and do it in a way that was safe and healthy for you, our faculty, and our students. As many of you know, we had a particular challenge in imposing 6-foot physical distancing in our classrooms. And what that meant was our fixed seating classrooms, like Billings Lecture Hall and some of the other familiar spaces around campus, saw reductions in classroom capacity by as much as 75%. When we considered movable seating classrooms, both general purpose and locally controlled, we saw an average of a 48% reduction in class capacity in order to affect social distancing. So the Faculty and Academic Affairs group went to work to figure out how could we accommodate our students and all of our faculty with these very real and important physical constraints on classroom. And so we came up with more or less 4 different modalities for teaching. And one would be the traditional in-person in small classes where we could accommodate them in existing classrooms. We could do as we normally would, but with 6-foot social distancing. The others were asking faculty to consider teaching online, teaching remotely, or teaching in a mixed mode, and that would be sometimes you would be in person with your students, and sometimes you would be interacting with them via Teams and live chat. We surveyed faculty to indicate their interest in teaching in these different modalities, and then received that feedback from faculty, and the registrar's office went to work and did an amazing job in a very short period of time to align where we thought we would have as much in-person instruction as possible with what faculty were interested in teaching in the different modalities. And where we landed was about half and half. So about half of our courses will have some in-person component, meaning either totally in person or in one of these mixed modalities, which I'll say a little bit about in a minute. And the other half were remote or online. You may know, those of you that deal with course scheduling and the like, the registrar is still working very hard to squeeze those last few courses into classrooms, but I think we're in really, really good shape. Just a little bit about the modalities. We're really distinguishing between online and remote. Online are the courses that tend to run asynchronously, so they may have recorded lectures and other modes of presentation in an asynchronous, meaning students can interact with the content at their leisure. We're distinguishing that from remote, where remote is there's a scheduled time and it's a synchronous kind of streaming, if you will, presentation of material. The mixed are really interesting. I think that's where faculty are going to use their creative juices and decide how they want to have some in-person activities and some remote activities. And by going into the mixed kind of mode, it allowed us to sort of really be much more flexible with reduced capacity in our spaces. So we're in really, really good shape, thanks to all your hard work, thanks to the incredible work of the registrar's office, and now we're moving on to figure out how we can continue to support students and support faculty in these transitions to a new mode of teaching. So that's kind of where we are on the academic side. And I should mention the at-home option. Very successful program to allow our students to be able to stay at home, not come to campus, but continue to do their work. Due to the generosity of many of you and our faculty, we were able to get more than 60% of our courses that had some at-home component, and students were able to continue to get the courses they need to progress. So all in all, it's we're close. We're getting ready for an August 31st start. And again, thank you for all of your hard work in helping us get there.
So thank you very much, Bill. I now want to ask Kirk Dombrowski, Vice President of Research, to give you an update on research initiatives.
Hi, everyone, and thanks. So as you know well, we had to basically shut down all research activity at the end of March and in early April. But unlike a lot of the rest of the units that the semester finished online and are looking to resume in the fall, we actually began the research resumption process basically by the end of April. It was clear that certain kinds of operations could continue and could be resumed. So we've actually spent much of the summer bringing the bulk of our research activities back online, and that means that field work was able to take place this summer. Wet labs have been reopened just about universally across the campus. We've opened creative activity spaces, studio spaces for creative activities, and have been working throughout the summer to figure out how to do that safely. Every research operation, labs as well as fieldwork, had to present a lab safety plan that met state guidelines and had protocols in place for safe operation. And that allowed us to get back out into the field and back into the lab and really start working. So as we start to look towards the fall, one of our big goals has been to figure out ways that we can keep from having to go into a complete shutdown mode again. That's, of course, always possible given what happens in our community. But one of our big goals was to talk about how we could modulate research activity so that it was better fit to the circumstances that we're in. And so our group has spent quite a bit of time working with the state and others to create a set of sort of activity levels that can be adjusted for the researchers on campus so that they can say, well, you know, under certain kinds of risk conditions, these kinds of activities are possible. As those risk conditions change, activity levels can change. And this will allow us, we think, to continue to progress in our research, even as the situation remains fluid and as new information emerges. So that's been a big part of our goal. That format is out and actually being vetted. It's been vetted by the Senate Executive Committee. It's going to the Postdoc Association. It's been through input from natural resources. We're reaching out to Extension and really trying to get as much input as possible on that. And the way that will work is really very simply a group of us will meet on a biweekly basis, look at existing metrics that we're getting from the hospital on hospital capacity, looking at existing infection rates on campus, in our community, and so on, and determine what kinds of activities are safe. And then that will go out to the rest of the community. And you can picture it sort of like a dial. We can turn up activity or we can turn down activity in order to continue operating safely, even as conditions change. We think this is a real step forward, both in terms of being able to continue our work and in terms of how we look at the research enterprise as a whole. If you remember back to April, which seems like about a year ago, we basically were doing everything on a lab by lab basis, and that was what we had to do at the time, but it was also logistically and time-wise a very, very slow process. Meant looking at every single lab individually for certain kinds of criteria. Going towards the fall, we're trying to shift our focus not to a lab by lab basis, but rather to a set of general activity categories. Are you able to be in the same vehicle? Can you have undergraduates employed in your research lab? How many folks are allowable per square foot? Those kinds of questions that run across all labs. And we feel like this is a way that we can be both flexible and intuitive in terms of our activity, while at the same time not having to go lab by lab by lab or project by project by project, which of course was the thing that was the most time consuming and the most, I think, probably the most frustrating for researchers. So in all, we've been able to reopen, I think the latest tally was about 540 something research activities. We've opened more than 150 human subjects protocols, a number of clinical facilities, and the goal is to keep those facilities in operation, safe operation, as we go forward through the fall. Thanks.
Thank you, Kirk. Appreciate that update. Now I'd like to introduce you to Simon Ananu, our Chief Information Officer, give you an update on some of the great work that's gone on outfitting our classrooms and other space with some state-of-the-art technology.
Thank you, Gary. Going back to the update that Dean Falls provided, I think one can assume that we also have to have a massive technology endeavor in place to be able to support teaching and learning. And precisely what we're doing at this point is being able to equip the maximum number of our classrooms with webcams and other technologies such as tablet technology or a digital surface on which faculty can write. So the combination of those technologies will make it possible for the faculty to be able to webcast their lectures to students who may be at a remote location, or even allowing those who may be in the same physical location or same classroom as the faculty to be able to participate and be engaged in a course session. We have also equipped some spaces, some of them smallest classrooms, with the same technologies, but those who allow the faculty to be present alone and be able to webcast their lecture, or in some cases, even using the same small classrooms to pre-record their lecture and then making them available to the students. In addition to those classrooms being equipped, we are also working very aggressively to put in place an integration between Teams and Blackboard, a full integration so that we'll have a course session or a meeting instance in Teams created for all class sessions with the faculty member and all the students enrolled in those courses, all pre-populated and ready for the faculty to turn on. We believe this is a very good step to facilitate the use of the technologies, but also so that the faculty will not have to spend their time trying to find the class roster and then copying and pasting the names of the students and trying to invite them to a particular session. We are also expanding our help desk capacity so that we'll have enough people available to be able to answer questions that will come up, and then having some sort of technology personnel who may also be dispatched or in a capacity where they can get to the classrooms as fast as we can, understanding that in some cases there may be downtime, but we want to expand our capacity so that we can reduce as much as possible any potential downtime that may occur. We are encouraging the faculty to also, in some cases, working with Bill and Academic Affairs to identify undergraduate teaching assistants who may also assist the faculty to manage the classroom, especially in this hybrid environment. And ETS will be working with the CTL to provide a certain basic technology knowledge to those individuals. And beyond the classroom spaces, we are also trying to equip some conference rooms with web conferencing technologies. And then we also plan to have some large scale or very sophisticated webcams available that can be moved around as necessary. So at a very high level, those are some of the things that are happening on the technology front. And hopefully sometime in the next week or so, we'll be scheduling some guided tours for the faculty to come and play with the technologies that will be in the classroom so they can feel comfortable with those systems before school resumes. And we have also put in place a procedure to give access or to grant access to new faculty, to give faculty access to our systems much sooner than usual. And the hope is that new faculty who have not been at UVM before will be able to get into our systems to start playing around with Blackboard, Teams, and other technologies to be ready for fall.
So thank you very much, Simeon. So I want to talk a little bit about testing and give you some updates and provide some information that some of you may have heard already. As you know, last Friday, Provost Prelock announced an additional testing strategy that we're implementing for all students, and that's a pre-test before they arrive to campus. That's an excellent step that we've added in to make sure that if students are positive, that they don't come to campus, as well as some of our local students as well too, if they know they're positive, so that we can isolate them and address their health needs before they even come to campus. In addition, we have the routine testing that will be going on throughout the year. And just to clarify, because there's some confusion out there, what we're going to be doing is doing testing as students arrive. We're going to be doing day 1 testing for students that are living off campus the week of the 24th. And then we're going to get into 3 weeks of weekly testing for all students. And then at that point, sometime in the middle of September, working with our health officials and our epidemiologists and our infectious disease specialists and our public health officials, we're going to assess our testing strategy at that point and then make a decision going forward to see what we need to do and make adjustments at that point. But one of the things I want to announce and we'll be sending out more information about is that we've decided to make available to employees, both faculty and staff, the option, if they want to get tested on campus. Excuse me. We all have the joy of too many phones in the system right now. So we're giving the option for employees, faculty, and staff to participate in the on-campus testing that we have for students. We're going to be sending out information, but it will begin the week of the 24th. You're going to have to sign up for it just so that we know how many people we need to plan for. All of our testing will be done in the Davis Center on the ground floor in the Burack game room. and it will be at no cost to employees as well too. What you can do is you will go at the student schedule, which is right now weekly. And you can't go more, but you can go less. So if for some reason you want to get tested before the start of classes during the week of the 24th, but then you want to skip the 31st and then go the next week, it's your call. You can do it at will. And then what you'll do is you'll get the results back the same way the students using an app that we will be rolling out for you as well too. So what we're going to do is open it up for questions right now, but what we're going to be doing is sending out more information on the testing, but we heard a lot of interest on the part of our faculty and staff about wanting to be able to be tested on campus. So we're making that available to you and hope if you want that you'll take advantage of that. So we'll open it up for questions. I know we've got about 240 people on our Teams Live today, which is great. And we want to be able to answer questions that you might have now. And while we're waiting, if anybody has any updates or any of our presenters want to add anything in, and anybody want to talk anything about move-in and some of the great work we've got planned on that. We had a wonderful session last night with students.
Gary, can I add something? This is
Yep.
Jay.
Sure.
Hi. So I just want to give folks a heads up. I know we have a lot of department admins on the call for academic departments. Keep your eyes open. We'll be sending out information about how to schedule the pods, you know, the little classrooms that are only for remote streaming. We'll be sending out that information, and we're going to ask that be scheduled through EMS. So that's going to fall mostly with the department admins, and we'll give you the instructions are really simple, but we are hoping to get that out probably today or tomorrow. It'll come to the chairs and they can give you that information. And faculty who are teaching fully remote will also get information on what they need to send you so that you can input that.
Thank you, Jay. So we got some questions coming in. So I think I answered the first question from Luke about our decision to move to weekly testing, that we talked with our medical experts and our public health officials that we were being consulting with on a regular basis, and we came to the conclusion that weekly testing at this point, with the addition of the pre-test, was sufficient at this point. Somebody asked about it being a serology test. It is not. It is a PCR test, and we feel very strongly about the reliability of that test. Simeon, there's a question about when will the Teams and Blackboard integration roll out?
We expect to have that integration in place by August 20th, 20.
Thank you. So the question about our testing centers, we've decided, because the testing has to go on throughout the semester, and we want a question about bringing in. Most testing sites are outdoors. We're bringing ours indoors. We just felt that it was more efficient to have it done indoors in the game room in there. We have to store pallets of supplies. If you think about it, we're going to be testing probably about anywhere from 15,000 to 15,500 people a week. So we have a lot of supplies and management that we have to do that. We have to ship those out twice a day to the testing site to be able to do it. So it was a matter of trying to get it all into one place at that point. On our first year medical students beginning 8/10, will on-site testing day 1, day 0 testing be available? Yes. So Kirsten, we've worked with Krista and Michelle from the Center for Health and Wellbeing, and we have testing available for the medical students arriving on the 10th and the 17th. So I think we're all set that. Are cloth masks available to be picked up at the Davis Center? Yes, they are. And as offices are approved for resumption of in-person operation, we can get that. Our office is a mix of UVM and UVMC staff, with the UVM staff who are campus be allowed to get tested. Any UVM employee can get tested. UVMC will have to check with the hospital about testing. Why is the first pre-test the saliva, not other ones that have options? Patty, you want to talk a little bit more about the testing that we're doing with Vault?
Yes, thanks, Gary. The Vault Health group is out of Rutgers, and we are using a saliva test because it is something that the students get a code. They actually will be connected to get something sent to their home. As soon as they go into the computer, they meet with a healthcare professional. They watch them do the saliva swab. They put it in a container and send it immediately back. And this was something that we could get done quickly and efficiently. Even though it's a saliva test, it is still a PCR test, which are considered the most sensitive. So that's why we did that element. And then the Broad Institute, which comes out of a collaboration with Harvard and MIT, there are several New England schools who've been working with them, and that is an anterior nasal swab, and it's also a PCR test. So the PCR tests are the ones that are the most appropriate to use.
Patty, I know you've done some work with the deans about air quality in the buildings, and Al, I don't know whether you want to add something about that. Al, why don't I let you take that question?
So at present, our physical plant staff, the mechanical engineering teams, and the ones that monitor all of the building ventilation systems have done a check of all of our buildings, and they are operating as optimally as they can in all of those buildings.
So question came up about how students apply that they have tested positive or not, and who will they report to. So the information for both the pre-testing and for the routine testing through the year will be managed through our student health services. And if we get information of a student who has tested positive, they'll reach out to them during the pre-testing. They'll reach out with them, make sure they know they need to isolate and stay home or stay off campus until the 10-day period is passed. We'll work with them and we'll notify the dean's offices, depending on the timing of that test, if they may be late arrivals to campus. We'll work with residential life on that as well too. And then during the year, during the academic year, the same thing. Student health services will reach out to those students if there's a positive test. That same protocol, and we're still finalizing it, will work out for all employees. If an employee is tested and gets a positive result, somebody from health services will reach out to you and refer you to your primary care physician for additional information on that. Will off-campus staff be sent cloth masks, and will they be able to access testing in the same way? Testing is, unfortunately, we're not able to offer the testing to on-campus employees at this point. It has to be those people on campus. And I would say to the department, I'm not sure who it is, if your health and safety officer contacts through Famous that there's a need to ship stuff, we can make arrangement there. Kirsten, our current level medical students have been here since June 1st, and that's the third and fourth year students. Kirsten, I've raised that question and we're looking at, I talked with Krista late yesterday and we're looking about whether we need to require them, and we'll be getting back to Krista later today on that. So will information testing for graduate teaching research fellows come out? So I'm going to assume that this is testing for the COVID-19. This applies to all students. Will get the testing for either the pre-test or the on-campus test. We began sending out the codes for the pre-test on Monday. We sent about 4,200 last night. We're sending another 4,000 a day, and the balance will go out tomorrow. And graduate student codes will go out tomorrow. How many students will actually be on campus? Annie, do you want to talk about the number of resident students?
Sure, Gary, I was looking at that question. Right now, we are projecting probably about 4,300 students will be in the residence halls. And then I also know that about 1,300 have chosen the at-home option. So overall numbers for enrollment, 1,300 have chosen the at-home option. But for students who live in the residence halls, it's 4,300, right about there is what we're going to project. Good, thank you.
So question was, an app was mentioned reporting student employee test results. How will privacy be guaranteed? Excellent question. We've had multiple internal offices that manage data security and information privacy review the contracts for the app, as well as the contracts for both the vault testing and the road testing during the year, and it meets all of the standards and requirements that we expect from that. One of the things that we that I mentioned earlier that we're doing is that results will go to student health services, not to anyone else on campus. So is medically protected information. Our Dr. Michelle Pavola will be the prescribing doctor for all these tests, so that's why the information is going back to there. Several HVAC physical plant members have mentioned to me concerns about testing inside the Davis Center, lack of airflow. Has outside testing been considered? So I want to be clear that the testing that we're doing is the routine screening of students. It is not symptomatic students. So symptomatic individuals, including employees, will be directed to be tested in 2 trailers that are on campus, one which is outside the Jeffords area and the Davis Center Oval, and the other is at the outside of Student Health Services over on Pearl Street. So the testing that's being done in the Davis Center are for all of our students and faculty and staff that just want to do it. It's not, they're asymptomatic, they don't have any concerns in it, it's just our requirement of tracking it. So, and I just want to comment, because somebody made a comment after the last session we did, we kind of power through these questions and give brief answers, because we try to get through as many of these questions as possible. Can you clarify, do all employees have to submit the daily health screening if you are working remotely, not working on campus in person? So Al, do you want to respond to that? I know you sent an email out last night about the daily screening and to talk about some of the training options that are out there.
Sure, Gary. If you're an employee that's been designated to work full-time remotely, you do not have to submit a daily health screen check-in. If you are on vacation or if you have another approved leave of some kind, you also do not. However, if you have been designated to work both remotely and also to work on campus, we need to identify on which days you are actually coming in to work on campus. So therefore, if you're in a both status, you do need to check in on a daily basis and tell us for that particular day, are you working remotely or are you working from home?
And it's a very simple questionnaire. I've seen many versions of it. It's a very simple way. And part of it, as Al indicated, as a supervisor, and I'm going to be monitoring about 20, 25 different people, just answering that question, I'm working remote today, helps me know that I don't have to follow up with those other people who haven't responded and answer that question. So just a quick way for us to be able to screen those tests. Can you give us a percentage, Annie, percentage of how many students are coming to UVM compared to previous years, both in terms of total enrollment and the number of students taking some form of in-person option? This information was extremely useful in our budgeting.
Wow. So total enrollment, you can project that, and Patty might have these numbers better than I do, but total enrollment, you can project 1,300 fewer on campus, but total enrollment probably is still staying a little steady. It depends on how many withdrawals or first year deferments we have. So I'm going to hand that off to Patty after I answer the on campus in the residence halls. I just mentioned 4,300 is our projection. And that's typically out of about 56 or 5,700 that we typically have on campus. But Patty, can you do the enrollment question overall?
Yeah, so right now we won't have complete enrollment numbers until the week of drop add. And what we're seeing is that we have more Vermont students who are coming to UVM and less out-of-state students. We anticipate there could be a 10% reduction in enrollment. We just don't know. Right now, we have significantly more deferrals and leave of absence requests from students than we did at this time last year. I think like 181 as compared to 55, although we have a very aggressive strategy to support retention of those deferrals. Some are deferring until spring, some are deferring until the fall. And as Annie said, we have a few fewer students coming actually to campus because of right now it's about 1,367 who have chosen the at-home option, but they have until August 30th to do that. So we are anticipating a reduction in enrollment and a reduction in the mix between in-state and out-of-state, as well as the need for financial aid. Already we're going to be giving more scholarship aid for our students because many of them performed at a higher level this past spring semester, so they did not lose their scholarships. So we do anticipate that we're going to have to deal with a reduction, as all universities are, but we're holding solid, and we have a lot of first-year students who really want to have this experience and want to come back safely.
Thank you, Patty. So a question was pointed out about how we're going to track that students have been tested and how will faculty and staff be notified if a student has been tested. So one of the things that we've created is the COVID information and Service and Information Center that's going to have a staff of people that are going to be supporting our testing, supporting resources on campus for employees if they got questions. You saw in the email that went out last night about the daily screening. They'll be helping with that. They're going to be a sort of a one-stop shop for people that are going to be doing that. Part of the staff in that is a data person who's going to help us track and monitor compliance with both daily screening for employees, but also for students, but also to testing requirements. And we've set up a protocol where we will be following up with them to make sure that they're getting it. And then working with student affairs, we will be referring people for consequences on it. And we'll be notifying them that they need to comply with this. And in the end, if they eventually don't, they may need to be asked to leave UVM. There was a question about, we've heard that batch testing was being considered for cost reasons, for instance, an entire floor of a dorm. Is that still on the table? Let me talk a little bit about the protocol that the Broad Institute is using. Broad is using what's called a pool testing model, which is a fairly standard practice out there. And what they do is they'll take, let me just say, 50 of the samples that we send to them. They'll take a sample of those samples, and then they'll test that. And if everybody comes back negative, those test samples are recorded as negative. If one of those if that pool sample comes back as including a positive, they then go back and resample every one of the 50 samples to determine which of the person or persons is positive in that process. It's a pretty standard method for doing it. We're not grouping them by any groups on campus or categories. They're being shipped down in vials that are indistinguishable, other than knowing who the person is, not by any groups. Al, a question for you regarding PPE. With face shields or eye protection be available for student public focus staff?
So the most relevant type of protection is just using face coverings. They provide adequate protection so long as you're maintaining a 6-foot distance. If you are in frequent contact with students or the public, you can have a plexiglass barrier installed, and those have already been installed where physical plant staff have deemed these areas exist on campus. Face shields and additional PPE can be requested if you are working closer than 6 foot on a frequent and permanent basis. That would be more for if you're in a research lab and you're teaching a subject and you're in close contact with the student. Those are typically more the norm for requesting face shields. And if you have any real follow-on questions, contact your safety officer and they can raise that with members of the Health and Safety Committee, and we can evaluate each individual case.
Thank you. Jay, you want to talk a little about that, and maybe Simeon afterwards. All of these talk about technology and other resources focus on faculty. Will these resources, pods, equipment, training also be available for staff and graduate students that also have teaching responsibilities? How and when will this be communicated to these groups?
So I can talk a little bit about this. If you are scheduled to teach a course, you will, and your modality is fully remote, then you will be included in the email that that is inviting you to request a pod space. We are anticipating that some folks who are scheduled to teach fully remote are not planning to come to campus. They plan to teach either from an off-campus location, or some of them may plan to teach from their office on campus. So the pods are really intended for people who cannot access the technology that they need, or otherwise, have a priority need to use that specially equipped classroom. And the reason I say that is we have about 25% capacity to be able to schedule remote courses into a pod space. And I think, by finding some other empty spaces on campus and classrooms, we should be able to cover the need, but we do not anticipate that every person who's teaching would need a pod. So for graduate students, if they are the instructor of record, or if they're the lead instructor, if they're not specified as the instructor of record, would like to request a pod space for them, that can happen. The other thing is that there will be an open time for people who did not get a pod to use EMS to either schedule pods during empty times, or to find an open classroom space that they could use that would be equipped with technology.
Good, thank you. And we're being staffed and supported in this Teams Live event by several great people who work for University Event Services today. And I can say also that the spaces in the Davis Center have also been outfitted with some additional virtual technology to support higher end meetings if people want to use them in there. So a question about faculty getting face shields. Yes, they can. Your designated safety officer can order those through the famous system there. Deb, I really want to, I'm going to read Deb's message. I appreciate it. I don't have a question, just want to send gratitude. Your efforts for safety for all is appreciated. Please help with the good work. I want to add my words of praise. Faculty and staff have been doing an amazing job all summer long, working to move towards opening in just a few short days. And you guys have been doing a great job. There have been a few questions that have been posted up here that I just want to clarify about the enrollment, because there's some misinformation there. Somebody posted that there's only 5,600 students. That's not what was said. As the provost indicated, we anticipate about 11,000 students, including undergrad, grads, medical students. About 95 of these will be 9,500 will be undergraduate students. This is all evolving and it is changing as we go. And we also have non-degree students that are enrolling still on this one. Will students and faculty be notified that someone in the class is tested positive? So here's where it gets a little tricky, and I know people want to know this information, but this is personal medical information. Same for the person who posted that question. If you test positive, we will not be notifying people unless there's a reason that we need to do contact tracing. We need to protect the privacy of this medical information, as the person asked earlier about the privacy concerns here. So we have a contact tracing team that will reach out. Again, as Al mentioned, we've got a lot of protection going on in these classrooms. So the faculty member will be wearing a face shield, maybe even facial coverings. There could be a plexiglass barrier in there. The seats are set 9 feet back from the faculty member. All the seats are spaced 6 feet apart. All the students are required to wear facial coverings. All the classrooms have hand sanitizer stations in them. They also have disinfectant wipes in there. So really, if everybody follows all these things, we should be in pretty good shape, both in the classrooms and in meeting spaces in the dining hall and the Davis Center. So it is going to be a pretty safe campus if we follow those. So I'm optimistic that those situations where if a person does test positive, the risk is going to be very minimal in a classroom. We will be notifying, and Annie, if you want to add any more to this, our usual protocol for notifying dean's offices if a student is out sick for a prolonged period in there. So the question was, if an employee does not have a smartphone or internet, how do they report their health status? Al, do you want to talk about options we have for that?
Sure, Gary. The most obvious one would be to just call in the information to your supervisor. We are nearly completed a companion form that you could keep with you and use it to answer the basic questions that we're going to be asking everybody to answer via the web-based form. and that will also be available on the 12th of August, just ahead of the mandated reporting that will begin on the 13th.
Good. Thank you, Patty. You want to talk a little bit about some of the issues around planning for fall semester and what might occur if things change?
Sure, Gary, and I thought I would also just address the last question that you had addressed in terms of the physical distancing, and that if you look at what is meaningful interaction or human contact, it really requires it to be face-to-face, direct, without any physical barriers, and it's more than fleeting or incidental. It has to be at least 15 minutes or longer where there's no barriers. So I think people have to understand that's meaningful contact, so people shouldn't, that should allay some of the fears. In terms of next steps and what are we going to do next, I think that it's really important that we understand that things are ever evolving, and we cannot predict what might happen from one day to the next. However, we are meeting on a regular basis with the Department of Health and Dr. Mark Levine, who's our commissioner there. We are working with and regularly meeting with our infectious disease experts and our public health experts and epidemiologists. Our president is in actual regular consultation with presidents across the state of Vermont of higher education in the region and beyond. He actually has sometimes weekly and bi-weekly meetings with them. And we are making adjustments on operations as needed. Gary and his team have done a great job in terms of knowing what are our dining options, and do we need to go to full, just delivery? Do we have enough PPE? So we can't predict what's going to happen in the country, but I think the fact that we're doing so much protection here, many of my colleagues are saying at their institutions, they're not doing half of what we're doing. We are committed to what the governor has done. He's done a very thoughtful, systematic, strategic approach to opening up our state. That's why we are in the positive condition that we are. And I think being in constant touch and having weekly meetings with the Department of Health and with our experts will help us know what we need to do. And fortunately, we have so much in place, and we were able, without all the preparation we have now, to pivot in the spring. Our goal is to hope that will not happen, but if it does, we will know when it needs to happen, and we will work with our staff and faculty and our UVM Strong team and our Health and Safety Committee, who've been amazing in terms of all the preparations to make sure we are ready for anything. And again, I think that constant contact is really critical. Does that help, Gary?
Sorry about that. So there was a question about our weekly reporting of net new cases. So just to explain a little about what that is. That is new cases that occur from one Thursday through the close of business on Wednesday. So it's not a cumulative like you see in the state report, but it is on a weekly report of those cases. I will tell you, having spent a lot of time tracking the numbers, there's a lot of complexities with timing on the test results and when and where those test results occur. I can tell you we are presenting the information that is accurate. I have to be a little sensitive because when they identified different people, we want to protect students' privacy and employee privacies on here. So will there be a policy regarding public coming onto campus? So we're limiting on-campus activities and events to UVM people only. Partially because events, and Annie may want to speak about that, are going to be so limited in numbers, they may need to be ticketed to control attendance at those events. Some of the larger public events that we might have are going to be significantly reduced. Can we say there'll be no visitors coming to campus? Kind of hard, but we're trying to limit that as best we can here. So since grad students could not choose the remote option, some went ahead and created fully remote schedules. Do they need to come to campus just to get tested every week? Doesn't that just create more risk? I don't know if somebody can speak to the remote option that's available to grad students.
Yeah, I can speak to that. We are just about to launch the form for graduate students to elect the graduate version of the at-home option, which will excuse them from testing. And as part of that, similarly to the students who chose the at-home option for the undergraduates, they are committing not to return to campus physically until the spring.
So there was a question about some of the additional responsibilities we're putting on our student health services. We've added additional staff over there to support with it, but also, as I mentioned, the new COVID Information Service Center that'll be operating out of Hills in the Davis Center has been, staff have been added to that so that we can make sure that we have adequate support for all the issues that were coming up here. There was a question about how do I find out who the designated safety officer is? Each of the directors and department chairs designated that person. I would check with your supervisor to see who that person was designated. Andy, there's a question here about health services. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of the dining services on campus and some of the information? And there will be information that'll be coming out in the weekly newsletter that comes out tomorrow, which have a lot more information about dining on campus.
Sure, Gary, thanks. And Josh did a great job responding also in the chat, but just to let everybody know that we're only really closing 4 dining locations on campus. Brennan's will be closed, and we might open that up both for a place to sit and eat, but not serve food. The Cyber Cafe and the library will be closed. And there's a small kiosk over in Jean Mance Hall, Residence Hall, that will be closed, and then the Waterman Manor will be closed. Saying that, though, many of our dining locations will have, different hours, limited hours, so you should always check on the website for dining services about what those hours are, because they have to clean in between, especially in our residential dining areas, they have to clean in between meals. So the hours will shift a little bit or be truncated. The other piece is most of our dining halls will be grab and go. Will be an app called Bite that people can order ahead and then pick up their meal. And then our 4 residential dining halls will have some capacity for seating for students, but not, about 50% by the time we clear out the furniture and do physical distancing. So, but dining services are working hard to keep the locations open and spread out and giving students a chance to spread out across the campus. Thanks, Gary.
And you do want to talk a little bit, the next question has to do with about compliance with regards to things like social distancing and facial coverings and some of the great work that's going on about our emerging public health campaign we're planning on.
Yeah, well, you just named it, Gary. There is a great public health campaign that we're going to launch about wearing face masks. We're also looking at first couple of weeks of school of having volunteers out on campus in the downtown neighborhood area, just reminding people. Downtown, we're actually asking students and neighbors to post signage in their windows of like, this is a COVID-free zone kind of signage, reminding people that that household really does adhere to being COVID safe and wearing masks and doing all the social distancing. And on campus, we'll do the same educational opportunities and certainly are asking those folks in the residence halls will be monitoring behavior. The Davis Center staff will be monitoring behavior in the Davis Center. Library staff will be doing that. And then out and around campus, we're really asking each other to hold each other accountable and reminding folks that keeping a mask on is certainly mandated by the governor and that social distancing is always best. So that's what we're doing. It's turning out really well in terms of how we want to approach this in a public health venture.
And Andy, I want to ask you to take the next question, which has to do with the mental health concerns of our students, maybe greater and slightly more stressful, and what will the great folks in CAPS be doing to help support that?
Yeah, so our counselors are all still available and online. We have incredible triage ability. We know that in this time, especially when you think about our first year students, there is going to be some sense of loneliness, some sense of stress about this. So our counselors are available, but I always like to stress that this can't just rest on counseling, right? We can't overwhelm our counselors. So it's going to take our entire campus to reach out, be human, be compassionate, check in with each other, make sure each other's doing okay. Sometimes we just need a listening ear. But having said that, our counselors will be available, triage will be available. There's also a phone line system, 24 hours a day, that will connect to our counselors on call. So we feel very good about our ability to respond to students, especially high-risk students. But really, I think we have to be really compassionate this fall for each other and for everyone, and not just rely on our counselors.
So thank you, Annie. So two questions I'm going to lump together. One has to do with when will testing begin? Testing will begin for employees the week of the 24th, and employees are not required. Let me stress that employees are not required. It's optional. If you don't want to get tested, that is your choice. Annie, I want to put two questions here to you and said, are there options for programming that will be able to socialize safely during the winter months? What are kind of some of our thoughts as we moved into the winter months and we're forced inside a little bit more for some of the programming?
Yeah, I mean, the programs are going to be, as I said before, most likely right now hybrid. We'll have some space. It's nice, Dean Falls and the academic folks. I mean, the priority is classes and classrooms. But in the evenings, it looks like there will be still some space in the Davis Center that we typically use, some other spaces on campus that we can use that still can have a hybrid mix of programs. So you can maybe have some students be available and in person enjoying a program, or holding a club meeting or organizational meeting, and still also have that be live streamed. So the folks using that home option, or folks in other places on campus want to join in, they can do that. So I expect that to be kind of how we're going to operate right into the winter, and being able to do that. And given our student population, a lot of students want to be out in the winter too. They're not afraid of the snow and being outside. So we'll try to do some really fun, healthy things in the winter as it gets colder as well.
So a question was posted about water fountains in the buildings and their safety. So one of the things that we had to do with the resumption of in-person operation plans is we had to go through and make sure that the systems in the buildings were safe and the buildings were flushed. So we flushed every building that's been approved to open for people has been set up that. Question came up about ordering signage on campus. That's not through Famous. If you go to print and mail, and there'll be information in tomorrow's newsletter about a lot of great additional publications that our wonderful folks in University Communications have put out. Annie mentioned a public health campaign. Who are the volunteers walking around campus?
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked that question. So what we're doing is during arrival week, now it's a week, not just a day, but arrival week, Daphne Wells and Student Life is coordinating our volunteers of staff who are volunteering to be out on campus, give directions, help people get located where they need to be, making sure they get to the right residence hall and then over to the Davis Center to be tested. So that's really the week of arrival, the week of the 24th through the 30th. That next couple of weeks, the first 2 weeks of classes, we're joining with SGA and our Graduate Student Senate, and a lot of student leaders want to help out in reminding their peers about how to stay safe and how to stay healthy. So actually, a lot of the volunteering will be students those first 2 weeks of classes. And if you want to help volunteer, please contact Daphne Wells during that time for move-in week. And if you want to help volunteer along with the students those first 2 weeks of classes, please contact Gail Champnoy. Thank you.
I've got time for one more question. It has to do with, just to confirm, employees who are working a mixed schedule, some remote and some on campus, only need to complete the health screen on days they're physically working on campus. So you have to complete the health screen, but as a supervisor, and I'm probably going to be monitoring about 25 different people, not all of which are in the building where I work. The first question is, are you working on campus today, or are you working remotely? If you check remotely, you don't have to answer any of the other questions. So it just helps for me from a supervisor, and we got a lot of supervisors on this call. I may not know or be able to remember, is this person working remote today? Is this person working in person today? And I may at about midday say to you, you haven't responded, and you write back and say, remember, Gary, I'm working remote today. Just take a minute and answer that question. It is one click box there. You can either do it on your computer, you can set it up on your phone, however you want to do it. So I want to give Patty a chance to make some final comments here. But again, I want to thank you all for joining us, and again, for the great work you've been doing all summer long.
Thanks so much, Gary, and thanks to the panel. I was just thinking about all the services that were being provided and what our staff do. So our student services in each of the academic programs are preparing our students for the new normal. Our CTL is preparing our faculty for the new use of technology. Our facilities and physical plants are preparing for a safe campus that is really supportive of our needs. Our University Event Services allows all of this team's live events to occur and are managing and helping to manage the COVID Information and Service Center. ETS is preparing us for technology. The registrar office has prepared our schedules and our classrooms and have managed every single change that has been requested of them. Admissions is preparing for our new group of students coming and making sure that they stick with us, and for the next group of 2021. And our student affairs with student life, preparing for programmings for students, residential life, making sure that their residential halls are what they need to be for those students, and the Center for Health and Wellbeing, really ensuring the health and safety of our students. All the academic units have been incredible, the dean's offices. Our communications team is really preparing us to tell our story. Our identity centers are really preparing to support our BIPOC students, and athletics is preparing our athletes to stay fit but safe. And FAB is preparing our budgets in a time of total uncertainty. And every other group that I didn't mention, I apologize, but I just wanted to regroup to what I said at the beginning in terms of how essential our staff is to the success of this plan. And a big thumbs up to Gary Durr and his leadership and all of UVM Strong for everything they are doing for our campus to ensure we will be here safe and secure. So thank you, Gary, and thank you to the panel. And thank you, staff, for everything you do.